You're listening to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast, the Bitcoin podcast for OGs and intermediaries. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and like this episode. Also, read the new BTCT KVR magazine. This episode is sponsored by Wasabi Wallet, Crypto Steel, Shop in a Bit, and Sato Dime. Thank you for listening.
Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. I'm Vlad and today I'm joined by Martin Habovštiak, who is the co-founder of Paralelni Polis in Bratislava. And he's also a coder, a very involved Bitcoiner who works on Rust libraries for lots of projects. And I'm going to let him also talk about that one. There are a bunch of them which I use almost on a daily basis, and I had no idea that he is a contributor to them, like I think it's Electrum Rust or Electors, also BTCPay server, and a bunch of others. So it's really good to have you, Martin. I don't even know what I should ask you first. I'm happy that I get to finally interview you. And let's start this. Let's talk about your work.
Thank you. Hello.
That was a short introduction on your behalf. So what is it that you do these days?
So I just finished working for Firefish, and currently I'm looking for other stuff to do. And meanwhile, in the open source realm, I'm doing some contributions into Rust Bitcoin library. There are some important things to do, and I want to try to do more stuff on CryptoAnarchy Debian repository.
When you say you finished working on Firefish, you mean that you finished coding for it?
Yeah, so the main part is finished, and there will be probably some other things to do later, but like the most of the stuff that I'm responsible for is pretty much done.
Now, you said the same about Electrum Rust, that you finished everything that you wanted to fix and you moved on.
So with Electors, like the things that were like affecting me mostly, those I helped to fix, and there isn't that much of stuff that I would need to change urgently right now. So it's like I moved on in the sense that I might return sometime when there is something to do, but I now contribute to some other things.
I think that's nice. I think you're also the maintainer of the Bitcoin Rust repository.
Yeah, I'm co-maintainer together with Andrew Posta and Tobin Harding.
And what's that like? Why do you work on this specific language repository for Bitcoin?
Yeah, so in my opinion, Rust is very good language, very well suited for Bitcoin applications. Because they need to be often fast, because they need to parse the whole chain, which is pretty big and complicated. And also they need to be secure, because you don't want to lose your sats or privacy or something. And Rust has properties that makes this like better. And the other part of it is I started working on Rust Bitcoin when there was because like Electrum Rust is written in Rust obviously. And there was a bug, like some overflow bug, which in some weird situations just caused crash in Electrum Rust. And it was actually in the library, not in Electrum Rust. And so I fixed the bug. We were like analyzing it for a while, and then I figured it out and sent a pull request, and then I started to contribute other things and such, and eventually I got invited as a co-maintainer, and now I'm trying to help with fleshing out to the API and improving the library, because I have also some other projects that use Rust Bitcoin, and I want other projects to use Rust Bitcoin, and I want the library to be good, to be reliable, to be kind of foolproof in a way. Like maybe foolproof is too, too confident way to say it, but like let's say that it should be unlikely to screw up in when you are writing in Rust and using this library. So that's my focus, and that's something I want to achieve, and I'm helping others to build this.
Right, so you also worked on Paralelni Polis, the Slovakian branch of it. It was open for a couple of years. As far as I know, right now it's no longer open. What is the story behind that?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, maybe even what is Paralelni Polis, it's so it started as a building in Prague.
That's where we are recording this, by the way, and thank you, Katka and Mario and everyone, for letting me use your studio. So please go on.
Yeah, so it was a building that was created by collaboration of hackers, Slovak hackers and Czech artists, which is kind of interesting. It's a whole pretty long and complicated story. I don't know if you covered it anywhere already.
I did an interview with Sodomak last year.
Yeah.
He told me about Benda, about resisting communism, about building parallel societies.
Yeah, so probably check out that episode. And but the short story is that these hackers and artists had some vision of improving the society, and they created this building and community. That is the more important stuff. Like building is just a symbol for the community who meets here and discusses these topics, and they do various things like Bitcoin, liberty, 3D printing, art, whatever. And so this was running for a while in Prague, and we were thinking like, okay, we should do one in Bratislava as well, because it's cool and it's useful. And some of the co-founders of Prague Paralelni Polis also became co-founders of Bratislava Paralelni Polis. And at the time when Paralelni Polis Prague was created, I personally wasn't like involved, although I kind of could have. Like I was aware of these people at the time, but when there was one in Bratislava going on, then I wanted to join, and so we also created or rather rented this building and arranged it for our purposes. And also we got together with some community of various Bitcoiners and liberty lovers and whoever else. And it was pretty cool. It ran with every business, charity, whatever, there are some difficulties. That's obvious, but it ran pretty nice. And it created a bunch of very interesting content. We had many discussions. There were some things actually invented there. Even the situation itself helped create some technologies that you might be using unaware of it, like thanks to Paralelni Polis Bratislava. So that's pretty cool. And after a while, pretty much during the COVID, like we had some difficulties running it also, but the main part was that the COVID stuff broke out and we had to shut it down basically at the physical space. The community remained largely, at least the core people who were the most involved, most interested. They are still communicating. And we were even thinking of restarting it now that there is not that much stuff going on. But it's kind of difficult because, some people move on, some people decided that Slovakia is not that great and they moved somewhere else, mostly Paraguay or other countries. So it's pretty difficult to restart it now. But we had some events at least and some community gatherings, so that's going on now. And we often meet in various conferences somewhere else, like in Prague. There is also another one in Košice, actually, which is another city, like the second largest city in Slovakia. So Bratislava is capital of Slovakia and Košice is the second largest city, and there is actually Paralelni Polis. And I unfortunately wasn't able to visit it yet. It opened towards the end of last year. I think it was something like 12 December or something like that. I'm not sure. You can probably Google it. And so we meet together when we are attending various conferences like Pizza Day today or other. There are some in Slovakia, in Czech Republic, or some remote conferences that we meet and we talk. So the community remains a little bit scattered, but still alive, I would say. But the building is no longer there.
It's a bit sad when I think about it, but let's make this a little happier because we are here at Pizza Day today, and there are about 200 plus people who attended this event and watched the talks. They even got to launch my magazine, which I'm really happy about it. But let me ask you about the stuff that you're building, because you mentioned Firefish. Firefly is something else. Firefish. I got a t-shirt there of Firefish. They are sponsors of this event, but I'm still not sure what that is. So how would you describe it?
So it's Bitcoin-backed loans. But as opposed to these BlockFi and other companies, this is based on multi-sig on Bitcoin directly. And so you have the trust is effectively 3 or 4. Technical details look a little bit different, but on-chain it doesn't look as 3 or 4, but 3 people could in theory scam the fourth one if they collaborated, which is much better security than having one custodian that holds everything. And there are some other ideas like how to improve the incentives better. There is also this interesting thing that when you are setting up, or rather after you set up the contract, if the collaboration wasn't during the setup, then the collaboration should be less likely afterwards, because these entities, if they don't trust each other, then let's say the person who is borrowing fiat, let's say this person wants to steal the Bitcoin, then he would have to convince the oracles, there are 2 oracles, to collaborate. But the issue is that the collaborators have no reason to trust him, because he could scam them as well. Then if they collaborated, he could steal the Bitcoins and keep it for himself and not pay the oracles. And there is no way for them to enforce it. And if he's already dishonest, then why would they trust him? So that's kind of cool, and the same goes the other way around for the borrower who is borrowing the fiat and depositing Bitcoin. So it's still even slightly better if they collaborated from the beginning during the setup. It's of course bad. There is nothing that we would kind of prevent them, but it should be in theory at least harder to convince several people to, or maybe companies, to do something bad. So it's better security definitely than just giving it to someone who holds a single key that can send it anywhere, anytime. So that's the main idea behind it. And there are some other technicalities like how to make it kind of user friendly and such. So there are some other things, but this is like the main idea. And maybe another idea is that we don't want to issue stablecoins because they are kind of user unfriendly. You know, like when people want to, I don't know, make a business and they want to borrow money so that they can launch the business, then they want the cash, the euros, dollars, whatever. They don't want stablecoins because the suppliers don't accept stablecoins. So it's not that nice to have stablecoins. And stablecoins kind of try to solve the issue of having oracles, and it kind of works, it seems, within some other limits. But if you want to like directly borrow fiat and don't want to deal with stablecoins, then you have no other option. Basically, you just have to use something like this, and I think that this kind of contract is like a really good step towards it. Of course, there might be ways to improve it, and you could probably add more signers, more entities, more oracles, or something like that. And maybe this is something that will happen one day. Who knows? But this is already, I think, like a huge step forward towards better security. And there is also one interesting thing, like if some meteors hits the oracles and they are unable to operate, then the borrower can still get back his bitcoins after the loan expires. Like so there is like some maturity date, and there is some time like after, like some time afterwards. It could be 2 weeks or something, and if it's not moved before then the borrower can take it. So even if everything goes to hell, then still borrower can get back the Bitcoin. So it's mainly focused on paranoid Bitcoiners who need the loan but don't want to give up Bitcoin easily.
Wasabi Wallet is unfairly private. It's the most advanced and most used Bitcoin privacy wallet with 500,000 downloads across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, as well as thousands of fresh new Bitcoins getting mixed every month. Wasabi makes use of the new generation Wabi Sabi engine to create mega coin joins, thus mixing your Bitcoins with those of hundreds of other users. For amounts lower than 0.01 BTC and remixes, you pay no coordination fee. Even if you don't use CoinJoins, Wasabi Wallet has a native Tor integration and downloads block filters to help you keep your network level and public key privacy. Download Wasabi Wallet for free today at wasabiwallet.io and experience the future of Bitcoin privacy.
So you're saying basically that Firefish is like BlockFi, but as a protocol without stable coins, without the counterparty risk of trusting in people, and some sort of multi-sig-ish on top of it, plus some programmability in terms of time locking, because you're not allowed to withdraw until a certain time.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like the contract is more or less fixed, the structure of contract, but like parameters like what is the amount, what is the time lock, those are changeable, and like it's kind of like people sometimes say it's non-custodial, but it's like depends on definition of custodial, of course, because like okay, like there are still 3 parties that can like take your bitcoins, but there are 3 parties, not one. That's the advantage, and the incentives should be such that it's unlikely.
I mean, it is possible, but it's more difficult to cooperate. But my question to you is it like a multi-sig where you know which parties have signed the withdrawal, or is it anonymous?
So yes, you know which parties did what, but like it is like multi-sig, but if classical multi-sig, you have this problem that you need to cooperate at the time when it's going on. So let's say if maturity date comes, or let's say the borrower returned the loan, then the borrower would have to open the wallet and sign the transaction. Like if it was naive multi-sig, like you just use Bitcoin contract and do this. So this has two problems. First is UX issue because borrower has to do some additional step, and second problem is that the borrower has to hold the keys all the time, and the key must not be compromised. But we did it like these tricks with time locks, and we actually pre-signed the transaction. So the key, there is also the part that the borrower discards the key right after pre-signing the transactions. So if the borrower doesn't have his computer compromised at that moment, then it's safe later. Like even if someone compromised his computer, if the return address is going to his hardware wallet, let's say, then he's completely fine. So this is a really cool security feature, and with naive multisig you wouldn't have this, and the borrower doesn't also need to sign anything or log in or do anything basically afterwards. Like maybe there is some super unlikely edge case where he would like to do child pays for parent, but other than that, there is pretty much nothing he has to do.
Right. So I think on this topic of Firefish, I satisfied my curiosity. So right now I want to know more about Rust. I know you said something in the introduction, but I know that Bitcoin was written in C++. And there are still some Puritans, people who say that good code that's fast and reliable is developed using C++. But there's this new generation of coders who say, no, Rust is better in so many ways. It's more secure. It has fewer bugs. What is your take on this debate, and why do you work so much in Rust?
Yeah, so I will be biased, obviously. But so why was Bitcoin not written in Rust? There is a very simple answer to this. Rust didn't exist at the time. And I guess that if Satoshi developed Bitcoin today, he would choose Rust. I believe so. And the reason is that Rust tries to achieve the speed of C and C++, because C and C++ are really fast. You have precise like control over things like memory, like and these affect speed. Like there are very technical quirks, like how just where you place your data in memory can really affect speed, and you can do this with C or C++. And but the problem is that it is super easy to make security vulnerabilities with C and C++. And it doesn't just mean that easy for someone who tries to do it intentionally. It's very easy to do it unintentionally. And there is like tons of security vulnerabilities. Like the famous ones are probably Heartbleed. Maybe many of you have heard of it. Like there was this super insane bug in SSL, and it could compromise the keys of the server. And when it was published, all hell broke loose, and everyone was questioning everything about security. But this kind of bugs are like pretty likely to happen if you write in C or in C++. And it's not like stupid people writing C and C++. Like very intelligent, skilled people still made bugs, because we are humans. Ultimately, no one is perfect, and even code reviews aren't perfect. Like we had some insane code reviews in Rust Bitcoin. We go very into details. Everyone tries to break the code of someone else and try to point out the bugs before they land in, but it still happens from time to time that we land some bug. At least it's not super critical bugs usually. At least I don't remember any like super critical bug. But so because we are humans, we have this problem, and there are other languages that solve this issue with security, like Python, JavaScript, whatever else, Java, and many others. But the cost of this is that they are much slower. well, depending on which one is much slower. Some of them aren't that slower, but still are slower. And this is not really great for some applications that really need the speed. And Bitcoin is unfortunately one of them, because the chain is large, and we already had the scaling debate and stuff. And it really does affect like synchronization speed and such, and UX, and ultimately it affects how many people will run full nodes, of course. So of course it needs to be written in fast language. And so Rust was created with the idea to solve these, like have fast language that is at the same time memory safe. So memory safety is the property that refers to like not having these kinds of memory bugs. And this is successful. Like it started as an experiment in Mozilla, and it was successful. It did solve the issue. Of course, the cost is that the code is like you sometimes write a bit more code. You sometimes must think a bit more about the code, and there are other things, but it pretty much solves the problem. And therefore, I think it's totally natural for Bitcoin. You know, like you have secure code that is fast, which is what we need here. And even like if you have applications that aren't like they don't need, let's say they don't need speed, just the safety, but they need portability. Like if you want portability, which means like you want to run it in browser, on desktop, or on phones, maybe in some embedded hardware like hardware wallets, then you have essentially three possible languages: C, C++, and Rust. And then you have like, okay, if you are handling money, then probably you don't want C and C++ because it's easy to mess up. So you have the only option is Rust, and this is actually what the reason why we chose Rust in Firefish. Or well, there are other reasons, but I think this is the main one, because we didn't have any other option, because we wanted to the code to be portable, and we wanted the code to be secure. And the choice is obvious. And we could probably, like, if the code was like 1,000 times slower than it is, probably nobody would even notice. But still the choice is this one. So it's not just speed, because many people are like, oh, I don't need speed that much. I don't need to use Rust. Okay, fine, but maybe portability is also a concern. And another part of it is that Rust solved these memory safety issues, but it had to create some tools to solve these issues. And coincidentally, these tools are very useful to catch other kinds of bugs. Not all of them, unfortunately, but pretty obviously, because if Rust caused bug-free software, that would be insane. Like everyone would start using it, maybe. But it's not even possible theoretically. There are mathematical proofs that this is effectively impossible. But it can catch many other kinds of bugs, like logical bugs. And this is really cool, especially if you can write your code such that this property of catching bugs is even like more effective, like that it catches even more bugs than by itself. Like if you structure code in some ways, you can defend against your own bugs better. So this is also something we do in Rust Bitcoin, so that we try to structure the code such that it defends against bugs of other programs that use this library, which is very cool.
In the beginning of the interview, I mentioned a few other projects in Bitcoin, like BTCPay. I think you also work on the Lightning daemon, but I'm not sure which one. What other projects do you currently work on, and are they all Rust-based?
So these other projects, it was some small contributions. Like I found a bug in BTCPay server page join implementation, that I was doing some page join experiments, really crazy ones, but I would say. So I found this interesting edge case that got later fixed. and I also improved some handling of some configuration. Regarding Lightning Network Daemon, it's LND from Lightning Labs. I added some functions to better connect to the operating system and better inform the system to know that okay, now the initialization stopped, their wallet is ready and things like that. I think I did some kind of improvement on configuration handling because there was very confusing error messages that made it very painful to configure or debug things and stuff. So I helped. Although I'm not sure if this was LND, maybe it was Loop. I'm not sure, but one of them. So I did things like that, like small contributions here and there, and other projects. Also BTC RPC Explorer, add some authentication mechanism. I usually do these things because I need them in my projects and stuff. So I do various things like this. And some projects there are other projects that are Rust based, and some project that is not pure Rust, and it's the biggest one is Crypto Anarchy Debian repository, which allows you to spin up your node more easily in a way that is well integrated into operating system. And this one, because of how Debian repositories work, obviously cannot be pure Rust because there are files that literally have to be something else. So I use something else for those files. There are other parts that Rust wasn't that much needed, although I sometimes kinda think that maybe I should have gone with Rust anyway because it would probably save me some pain, who knows. I'm not always sure whether it's worth it, but it could be. So there is bunch of projects, and this Crypto Anarchy Debian repository joins together multiple software like Bitcoin, the LND, BTCPay server, and such. And to work well, I needed to do these contributions, these small things to add to for the whole project to be better. And it did improve quite a few things significantly.
CryptoSteel is the original Bitcoin cold storage backup, and it's been innovating self-custody since 2013. Designed and manufactured in Europe from the finest and most resistant stainless steel, the CryptoSteel cassette and the CryptoSteel capsule are industry standards. These cold storage devices are made to resist house fires, extreme floods, and physical shocks. You can also use CryptoSteel to store your important passwords, BIP39 passphrase, or Nostr private keys. Buy your CryptoSteel today from CryptoSteel.com and use promo code BTCTKVR to get a 10% discount. CryptoSteel. Secure your Bitcoin like an OG.
When I speak to some Bitcoin developers, they tell me that there are many limitations in place that they find a bit frustrating, and they wish they could, in the event of a hard fork, they wish they could include some features in there. And I want to ask you, as someone who works with the Bitcoin code on Rust, is there any optimization or change that you would make if you were to either include them in a future fork, or else if Bitcoin was to get launched again today and they would be a must-have?
Interesting question. Nobody asked me anything like this. But things that come to me, obviously there is this mandatory hard fork because there will be time hour fallback eventually in I don't know how many years. So we need to fix that either way. So maybe not make the time tracking or time computation that limited from the beginning is the one. There is also maybe have SegWit from the beginning. That's kind of obvious. It would help so much then. Just the malleability fix. That's the main reason. If it was there from the beginning, then things like this how it's called that you can replace the input. I forgot the name, the one that's needed for L2.
It's not RBF, right?
No, it's another type of signing transaction.
Maybe you'll remember along the way.
Yeah, maybe I will remember. Basically, it's the required soft fork for L2, and I had another idea just today that would be kind of interesting, although I'm not sure how much helpful, but might be worth considering. Like having a way to like bump another transaction without having to prepare the transaction for bumping. Like, for instance, if you want pre-signed transaction, then and you want it to be later like not replaceable, but if you want to later do child pays for parent without spending the outputs that you intend to have there, so then you have to add an additional output. This is what anchors do in Lightning. So in Lightning channels, you have to add 2 more outputs to solve this issue that basically you don't know what the fees will be in the future when you are trying to close the channel. And these outputs also waste some space, are a bit inefficient, and then you use them to make another transaction. And what could be kind of useful, although in case of Lightning it could probably open some attack vectors, I'm not entirely sure. I know there was some conversations around this, but what could be kind of interesting would be if you had like just normal transaction like this, and if you could create another transaction that basically subsidizes the other one without having this link. And I also like thought that it could be done via soft fork. So the way it could work is that make the other transaction that is anyone or that is valid for old node, of course. But the new nodes would see it as only valid if the other transaction it contains the transaction ID, if it was already confirmed. And it could be within the same block, it could be in the chain, but that would be the condition. Probably doing it in the same block would be most effective, and it could be better probably. But so that the transaction would be valid only if another transaction is in the block. And if you have this condition, then you can just set the very large fee on the other transaction, and then just subsidize the other one. So this could be a little bit more efficient regarding the block size, and it can be done via software, which is pretty cool, I think. But I'm not sure. I just got the idea today, so maybe there will be some development, maybe not. Maybe it has some horrible problem that people will rather not do it.
I'm really happy that this was first recorded on the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. So if you go on other shows, people are gonna know, oh, it's that one that he discussed, and I recorded this the day after you taught about it. So I'm proud to have it recorded here. I was wondering if you like any of the privacy proposals for the base layer of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I was also like thinking a lot about privacy. I have this proposal that I didn't like publish. I showed it to some people to make channel factories more private, such that the members of channel factories don't know how much each other has. So like if you have like channel factories of, let's say, 10 people, and 2 of them move the coin so that one of them sends to the other, then the other 8 people wouldn't know that this amount changed. And this requires actually, interestingly, like if you try to do it naively, you would think that this requires the same cryptography as in Monero, so Pedersen commitments and bulletproofs and stuff like this. But actually, it only requires Pedersen commitments, and you can do bulletproofs off chain. Because you with Pedersen commitments you can commit to the amount, and you can prove to all other participants that this amount is such that it should be there without revealing it, and so it would be pretty efficient. And of course the risk is that if Pedersen commitments get broken, then those who use this protocol would lose their satoshis. So that's the risk, which would be opt-in. So I want to like kind of clear up the proposal and send it somewhere, but this is something I was thinking about. But privacy on main chain, on the base layer is pretty hard in general, and I also think like doing stuff like Monero, like adding noise to the chain is not really that great. I really like more removing information from the chain, which is what Lightning does, which is what channel factories do, which is what Taproot does. It is much better design because it's
more scalable.
It's scalable and it incentivizes people to use it. That's really a strong one. Like people also say like, yeah, Monero is like mandatory privacy, which is good, but that's not actual reality because Monero, using Monero is not mandatory. That's the problem. So, our problem. Of course, we don't want to force anyone to use anything, but like because using Monero is not mandatory, they don't have that great unlimited set and stuff. And I don't want to like make this into some kind of flame war, but just it seems better to just make it incentivized.
Yeah, let me get into the lesser popular territory and ask you for opinions that can get you cancelled on Twitter. So what's your take on these ordinal inscriptions and the fact that they use Bitcoin in a non-financial way? And they use Taproot, so they kind of bumped the amount of Taproot transactions. They priced out some financial transactions, so now the on-chain fees are higher. But at the same time, it's kind of healthy for the miners because they kind of needed this. So
okay, I have opinion that is very nuanced and could get me cancelled if people really don't understand what I mean. So I think that ordinals deployed and used today when the chain is not already full are more harmful than helpful to the ecosystem because they increase the cost of syncing and stuff. But we hope that in the future, pretty much all blocks will be full. I not even hope, it's kind of predicted. You know, like if there is a lot of use, there will be always someone competing for block space, and essentially this means the blocks are full. So whatever we do, we have constant amount of data, which is 4 megabytes. Or maybe like because of the way the discount works, it could be between 2 and 4 or something like that. But you know, like we have pretty much constant block size. But here's the interesting thing, like verifying a block which is full of normal transaction, financial transaction where someone is sending stuff to someone else. You can do some simple math, like divide the block by the size. Like if I really estimate it, like divide the block size by the size of inputs and outputs of normal transaction, you will get some estimate like how many inputs there will be, and you can assume that for each input you have at least one digital signature. So you calculate some number of signatures. And if you compare it to a block which has only one transaction, it could be even Coinbase transaction, but let's say Coinbase and another one, which has an input that is so big that it fills the whole block, but contains only one signature, then the latter is actually better for verification. Like you, the speed of verifying signatures really does matter. And I did test this, that I set some node with some hardware. I synced it with default settings, and then I restarted it and set assume valid to 0, which means that some signatures that are so buried in the chain that Bitcoin Core doesn't even bother verifying them, like with default settings, they will be verified. And this increased the time of synchronization massively. I think it went from like 8 hours. I think it was from 12 hours to like 3 days or something like that. I'm not sure. I don't want to lie, but it was definitely more than a day. So it really does matter a lot how many signatures you do have. So for verification, having these non-financial transactions that just load the data is better if the block would be full anyway. Like you want block which is full of some data that is the easiest to verify. You know, like having thousands of transactions will cost you more on power or on time and on many things than having just one transaction and some big chunk of some bullshit data that you will only keep. You will hash it, check the hashes, and that's it. So that's the nuanced answer. But
so you're saying that you're not running the ordinal disrespecter software to filter these transactions on your node?
I didn't have even time to look into it. I think it would make sense to run it today because today without ordinals the blocks wouldn't be full, so they are harmful. But of course, like we can argue whether like this is like it harms financial transactions, but it's just free market. Well, if someone values their ordinal more than someone else values their financial transaction, then who am I to say that they are not allowed to do that? Of course, and even then, like this incentivizes use of Lightning, use of Taproot, use of technologies that actually increase privacy. So, in an ironic way, maybe we should be thanking ordinals for incentivizing people to run the damn node and to like install the Lightning wallet. You know, like yes, people will be pissed off that opening channel is also costly, but you know it's kind of silly. Like you had all this time where you could open cheap channels, and we did say like open channels now when the fees are low. You will have it ready when the fees are high. And people didn't do it. Well, guess what you get? That's what you get.
We had like 4 years to do that.
Yeah.
We assume that low fees are going to last forever.
That's a wrong assumption from the beginning. Like pretty much every Bitcoiner who is like sane was saying that the fees will get back. Like the fees will be high again. It was pretty much... It was not only known, it's also required for Bitcoin to survive. If there are not high fees, like miners will not be that incentivized to mine, and the network could become insecure. And this is not just theory. Like look at the coins that got double spent because like they have a very low hash rate because they are not very profitable. Like Ethereum Classic comes to mind, so they were double spent. So if Bitcoin had low fees all the time, we would have the same problem probably, and maybe even bigger one because Bitcoin is like more juicier target for attackers. So we need the fees to be high, and these incentivize Lightning transaction. And yes, there will be people who will be annoyed, but come on, this is a reality. You have your responsibility. You can do choices. You know, like it's like being pissed off that you broke your leg and nobody wants to help you because you didn't pay your health insurance. No, you need to buy insurance before the event happens, not afterwards. That's kind of obvious thing in other aspects of life. Like if someone cried that, oh, this doesn't work because I didn't buy the insurance, and the insurance doesn't work because I didn't buy it before and I only bought it when the event happened. It would look crazy, but those people are crying now that, oh, it's too expensive. Well, you got what you like you caused it yourself.
Remember the paper wallet? Ah, yes, the good old days when you printed your Bitcoin private key on an offline computer? It was so fun, but not really easy and totally not secure. Today, we have Dime, a chip card that acts just like your good old paper wallet, but with all the modern security features and top-notch functionality. It turns your Bitcoin into a bearer asset, which you can easily trade in person. Thanks to NFC, you can use the Dime card with your smartphone. Creating a new pair of Bitcoin keys takes just 2 swipes. Check your balance in real time, create multiple key pairs. Whenever you want, you can reveal your Bitcoin wallet's private key with just a single click. The simple, uncluttered interface lets you quickly see if a key pair has been unsealed. Finally, the cold storage you've been looking for. Available now on sadodime.io.
Let me ask you about scaling layers. I know that nowadays it's less taboo to talk about Drivechains, for example, which is a proposal to bring merge mined chains that do different stuff. For example, a Zcash sidechain, maybe an Ethereum sidechain, and bring all of that economic activity to the same Bitcoin miners to fix some of the security budget. But there's also the risk of one of these chains becoming dominant and leaving the Bitcoin main chain less used. So there are some risks associated with this. At the same time, I think something else that's interesting is the extension block with Mimblewimble. It was deployed on Litecoin. It's effectively a block size increase on a separate chain. It's still mined by the same miner, so it increases the revenue, and it's also adding privacy. I think that's an interesting design, which is not being discussed too much in the Bitcoin circles. What's your take on these? Or do you think it's just Lightning that's the future?
Well, drive chains are kinda like interesting trade-off. At least if we talk about drive chains as described by Paul Stotz. I'm not sure how his name is
Paul
spelled.
Stortz.
Yeah. And so there is this thing that miners could steal the satoshis in there, and it is opt-in, which is nice. And the theft would be massive, and there is some like argument why the incentives should be so that they probably won't do it, at least not for like sane chains. And it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure, and there is some pushback against it, and I think like we should probably try other ways that are more secure first, and maybe if all other ways fail, then maybe consider this. It seems better approach.
I mean, there is a more secure way. There is a liquid federated sidechain, but it seems like it's not being used at all.
I wouldn't like it's completely different design, I would say, and it's good question whether it's more secure because now you have federation.
Yeah, most people don't get the point of having a federation.
Yeah, it's like in both cases you have multiple parties, and some of like if there is collaboration they could steal. Like pretty much the similar security, I think. It depends on various parameters, and like I don't think I could analyze it right now. But yeah, I mean, we could try these alternatives first. And like I like being opt-in, but there is also this idea that some people had that they think that you can. And I think Paul had this idea too, that you can kind of reuse the work by miners without adding data to Bitcoin and to secure other chains. And this idea is actually invalid. You cannot improve security of another chain without adding the data and the verification rules. Well, maybe you don't have to add the verification rules, but definitely you cannot do it without increasing size in Bitcoin, and I mean the size that miners will have to process. And this is kind of like pretty difficult to explain with some cryptography stuff, but basically, if you do it in naive way, there are two attack vectors against it. So or rather, there are like three options. One is that you may make it so that it doesn't work at all, or that it doesn't increase security, but it does something weird. You can do a design that like increases security, but is totally trivially attackable in other way. And then there is another design that increases security by mining Bitcoin, but so the first attack is one that you could pretty much double spend. You could rewrite history, and the second design is that allows an attack, denial of service attack. So it destroys whole chain, and it's also trivially executable. Like any user, or not any user. It has to be someone who creates these other blocks, but pretty much anyone, just single. You don't need some majority or anything. Anyone who is capable of producing these alternative blocks of this altcoin is able to pull off this attack. You need to produce just one. Oh, sorry, maybe two, but if you can produce two such blocks, then you can pull off this attack, and basically it's destroyed. So you cannot increase really Bitcoin block size by doing this in a secure way. I'm sorry, it's impossible. And I was actually reading about it, but didn't finish the article. But yeah, I analyzed it, and it doesn't work. It's impossible. So this doesn't work, but extension blocks are effectively block size increase in a soft fork way. So the only thing that I like about extension blocks is that if we agree that it's good time to increase block size, then we can do it via soft fork. That's like the only one. And Mimblewimble is kind of interesting, but to my knowledge, like the space savings aren't that huge compared to Lightning, let's say. I mean, it could happen one day that it would be deployed. I guess I wouldn't mind too much, but I'm not sure about all the implications. It does improve privacy, but effectively it only improves the privacy in a way CoinJoin does, because you need to somehow, like, the inputs are joined, but then if you have active attacker, then he can trivially decouple them. So there needs to be some protocol that is similar to this Chaumian Ike stuff, like Wasabi uses, to like securely mix the inputs and outputs. And this needs to be used instead of the naive implementation Mimblewimble has, to be actually secure. And that's another thing that makes it kind of problematic. But it's kind of interesting. And the other problem is it adds some, as someone called it, rocket science cryptography, like more difficult cryptography to the chain. Although this one isn't that crazy, I think, so maybe it's not too bad, but yeah, it's nuanced topic. But I think like currently Bitcoin block size is pretty big. I'm not that convinced that we should try to lower it yet, because like I think what is really like, because like the main reasoning behind lowering block size is that the UX of running full node is worse. And then, but from my experience, there is something completely different that causes people to not run nodes, and that is simply by it's either lack of education why they should run it, or it's just the UX of like installing software and setting it up and stuff like this. This is much more like this is much bigger barrier for people than like paying few bucks for bigger hard drive or better internet or something. Like this is incomparable, and I say this as someone who like spent a lot of time in Paralelni Polis, Bratislava, where I observed firsthand what new buys do when they like try to interact with bitcoins with various people. So, like many developers are in this bubble where they imagine that everyone knows like how to calculate elliptic curves on the paper or something, like to use some hyperbole. Basically, everyone like feels that setting up stuff is easy, and then just people don't do it because it's expensive, which is absolutely not the case. And I saw so many things. Like I made a talk about it like several years ago, like how UX like affects people and stuff. And I witnessed it firsthand. I helped these people to resolve their issues, and I know that this is much more bigger barrier than just having a few more bucks. So I'm not convinced that like, this is the main reason. So I would be convinced if like there was like good wide variety of Bitcoin software that you can set up very easily, the good education programs, good sources that would really explain why to do it. Maybe some optimization on storage. Like storage is ironically kind of pretty frequent complaint. It's not much about bandwidth or something, but people just don't have a large enough drive, and people don't understand that they can do pruning. So this another part. Also, like until recently, most software was incapable of running on pruned Bitcoin D. So that's also a problem. Like if you have something like Electrum Rust, or until recently LND was unable to run with pruned Bitcoin D. Oh well, it could run, but it was kind of dangerous. So these problems should be solved first. But until these problems are solved, and I hear like many people saying, okay, I would really like to run Node, I would know how to do it, but unfortunately I can't afford to spend more CPU time on this or something, then we should probably lower the size. But I also think that we shouldn't increase it more because it's not really needed, and we should more focus on optimizations. We should have finally like Lightning on Taproot implemented at some point. We should have channel factories and other similar ideas. And if like every idea is like implemented and it's still not enough, that's the thing. Like who knows? Maybe combination of Lightning, channel factories, and a few other things will be enough just to with 4 megabytes box. Who knows? And if we find out that it's still not enough and the hardware also is good enough that we could afford to increase the box size, then I think the way to do it is by extension blocks is better than hard fork. Or if hard fork, then maybe consider coupling it with the time overflow fixing one, but I still would probably prefer soft fork. So that's the only reasonable way to do it, I think.
Let me take a step back and ask you this, because you have been in Bitcoin for quite a few years. You've worked on a lot of projects. As you mentioned, you realized that you've done everything that you wanted to do in a few of them. You fixed the bugs. You feel like there's nothing else for you to make contributions for. So what keeps you excited about Bitcoin? What makes you get out of bed every morning and say, yeah, today I'm going to work on this project? Well, what is it? What's your motivation?
Liberty, basically. So yeah, I'm voluntarist among other things. So I think that people should be free to transact with anyone. And also I come from Slovakia, which is country that was plagued by communist propaganda and communist regime for I think like 40 years or something like that. And like we had this tradition, like there were ways to bypass the system. Like my most favorite one was like smuggling books. Like there were literally people who took a hike over like the highest mountains in Slovakia just to smuggle books, secretly of course, and doing like Tor or other cryptographic software is basically equivalent of smuggling information like in a more efficient way, in a way that is more accessible. You can smuggle information much more easily than before. Like before you had to like take a hike. And this is kind of interesting because people say like, Bitcoin is too like difficult to use and stuff, but people literally took a hike over like largest mountains just to smuggle books before, and now people are complaining that they need to click 3 times on their phones. It is insane. So that's like kind of like from this historical perspective, I totally understand. And yeah, communism like destroyed so many lives here. So it tortured people to death, literally. I'm not kidding. Like they often release the people before they died so that it doesn't look like it. But sorry, it's pretty obvious that these people had like much shorter lifespan because of torture. So there were like people horribly tortured. I don't wish it to anyone.
And I come from Romania, so I know.
Yeah, so it's absolutely horrible, and I don't want this to ever happen again. And the big part of why it can happen is like governments existing basically, and they are like vulnerable to this takeover by communist regimes or other ideologues, of course, because like, not only communism is problematic. And the other part of smuggling information is, of course, smuggling money, because free market helps people. And if we want to have tools to smuggle money, then we need to build them, of course. And this is as a protection against these situations. And I'm convinced that any way that in the past people could bypass government under these regimes helped them tremendously. So I think that helping them even more with Bitcoin and other privacy tech, we can help even more. So that's the main motivation for me.
Shop and Bit is the online store where you can buy anything with your Bitcoin. Choose between more than 800,000 products, book flights and hotels, and order everything else through the concierge service. With Shop and Bit, you can buy your weekly groceries, get the latest iPhone, upgrade your computer, buy something sexy for your new girlfriend, book a trip to El Salvador through the travel hacking service, and also grab a copy of the latest Bitcoin Takeover magazine to read in the airplane. Everything is integrated with a familiar shopping experience that doesn't track you and deletes your data after the order gets completed. You also get a 3% discount if you pay in Bitcoin. Try Shop and Bit today and use promo code BTCTKVR for a €5 discount on your first order.
Right, so how can people follow you and your work? Do you have a social media presence? Do you have a GitHub where people can check out your projects?
Yes, I did use Twitter, and I stopped using it because it was messing with my head, and like it's better to waste time arguing about technical stuff on GitHub than on Twitter. So that's way better. So I mainly use GitHub. The nickname is KIXNUIL. Kixunil. KINXUIL.
Okay, that's a specific name.
So yeah, I'm commenting on Rust Bitcoin. So if you don't want to type it, just type rust-bitcoin.org, and then you can click on the GitHub button, and then you will eventually arrive at me. So that's the way to follow my work on GitHub. And there is some, I think I have published email somewhere, so if someone wants something more specific, it's possible to write me an email.
Yeah, the other podcasters who steal my guests, you can email him afterwards, but after I publish this episode. So I got the ideas first. Good luck doing better than me. Anyway, thank you very much, Martin. This was incredible. I found out a lot of information from you today, and I hope that everyone who listened to this got a bit richer in terms of understanding Bitcoin. And best of luck with everything that you do. You develop a lot of projects, and you seem driven to keep going.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and like this episode.